Okay, it is 2:01, so I think we're going to go ahead and get started. Hi, everyone. I'm Rachel Hirsch with NGA. Thanks for joining us on our second kind of optional off-week webinar. As you guys heard, today we're going to be talking about two data sources that we think you guys might find useful in your work. We're going to be hearing from Nick DePorter and Mar Carpinelli from LinkedIn first. And then we're going to be hearing from Dave Clayton at Strata Education Network on their consumer insights data and the surveys that they're continuing to do throughout the pandemic. They're each going to speak for about 20 minutes, so about 20 minutes for LinkedIn, about 20 minutes for Strata, and then we're going to open it up to questions after that. So if you have questions as we're going through the presentations for LinkedIn or for Strata, feel free to send them in the chat. So we have some that we can get to immediately when we go to the Q&A, but just know that we're not gonna get to those until both presentations have gone. But again, feel free to enter those in the chat. And if they're quick questions, one of them might be able to type and respond as well. So we are going to get started with Nick DePorter, who's the Senior U.S. Public Policy and Government Affairs Manager at LinkedIn, and Mar Carpinelli, Data Scientist at LinkedIn. But Nick, I'm going to turn it over to you first. Nick, you might be on mute, but it looks great.
There I go. Jeez, I think I was so hoping that you're using Microsoft Teams that I was looking for that. I couldn't find the mute button.
My apologies.
So thank you so much for having us. We're very lucky to be a part of this partnership. We are excited to be sharing information with you all today that we've been using to help assist our federal, our state, and our local partners during these pandemic times. We have been leveraging our workforce data for good for several years now, and this has been something that we have been taking a long, hard look at how we can continue to be effective and help you all use our data to help make some workforce decisions and some decisions around how you're reskilling your workforce. So with that, quick introductions. Nick DePorter. I'm Phoenix-based. I have been with LinkedIn for about 4.5 years now. Before that, I was in higher education. Love my job, where I'm basically responsible for taking our workforce data and sharing it with state and local leaders in hopes that they can be leveraging our data. I have 3 young children, so we've been super busy at home. The weather is 94 degrees, so it's a cold snap in Phoenix right now, so we're all really enjoying that. And I'm excited to be joined here today by my partner, Mar Carpinelli, who'll introduce herself. Mar won't say this part of it, but she's really the cornerstone of these reports that we've been sending and sharing with our policymaking partners. So I'll just turn it over to Mar for an intro as well.
Thank you, Nick. Hello, everyone. It's an honor to be here. My name is Mar Carpinelli, and I'm an economist and a data scientist with a background in government and in international development. Here at LinkedIn, I lead a lot of our research and work in policy data science in North America. And in normal times, that usually means doing research on entrepreneurship and artificial intelligence and skills. But in 2020, we've refocused a lot of our work into what we call nowcasting, which is what Nick's gonna present now. And it's our effort to help governments, help people back to work using LinkedIn data and LinkedIn insights. So with that, I'll pass it back to Nick.
Thanks, Mar. I failed to mention that we've had the luxury of working with NGA in the past. In last year's initiative with Governor Bullock's Good Jobs for All Americans, we're able to share our labor market insights data, which really has served also as a lot of the foundation for a lot of the data we'll be talking about here today. So just quickly, a little bit about our team. The economic graph team, we sort of ride the fence of policy, but also working in the workforce and the idea of getting everybody the opportunity to get a great job. We do that by, by really putting together what the economic graph looks like. So when we're sharing data with our partners, we go in there and we tell them what their region looks like. So this is what the world looks like through our eyes. And the data we're going to share with you all will also be that. So we have 706 million members, and that's over through 200 countries. 189 million members are in the US. 50 million companies represented, 11 million jobs posted. I think one of the ways we make money is by people paying us to post jobs, but we also ingest jobs. We do that so that we can have a really good full picture of what's going on in a particular region in their workforce. 36,000 standardized skills. I'm sure, and I hope most of you have LinkedIn profiles. On your profile, you have skills that you can add to your profile, and there's 36,000 of those in play on the platform. And then 90,000 schools. So that number went up drastically in the past year because we made a big effort, and we continue a big effort around getting those that do not have a four-year degree more on the platform. So we have all the high schools on the platform as well. So all high schools and all higher educational institutions are ingested on there. So a little bit about our monthly reports. So these were, as Mar mentioned, our response to what was going on in the world. So we had some theme teamwork around entrepreneurship and other umbrellas that were very, very cool. But at the time, talking about entrepreneurship was not as important as getting people back to work. So with our partners that we've been working with, we developed these nowcasting reports. These reports go through some important data like in-demand hiring, career transitions, and also look at the skills that are most prevalent in those roles. And they were looking at those on a bi-monthly basis initially because of the impact of COVID at the time. It was really hitting hard, and the more information, the better. We've since pivoted to monthly reports with our partners. And we're looking forward to opening up these reports to participants in this program as well. So the goal of it was, of course, to provide relevant and timely data, and we've been successful in that. And you can see some of the quotes we received from some of our partners that have been using that for leveraging it in different ways. I'm going to walk through a report, and this will, we'll have reports for, I believe, 15 of the 20 participating states. The reason why that is because of our high quality data standards is we want to come with the most confidence we can with the data. And when we don't have that because of market penetration or what have you, it's something that we don't want to produce a report for. So we are working on those things, and we, as we walk through this, we'll work through Rachel to let you know what reports we have available. So this is what our report looks like. This is, just took Ohio as an example. We've been sharing this directly with the governor's office there. And what a typical report will look like, it'll walk through how they can be using the insights. It'll certainly talk about what I mentioned about what are the fastest growing jobs in your region, how people are making those transitions, what jobs they had before they made those transitions. So you can even be suggesting jobs to people through your workforce agencies as they're looking for those, because they may have a lot of skill parity, and you'll see what that looks like there. You'll see an at-a-glance profile there where you'll see the snapshot of your state. In Ohio's case, there's 4 million members, 128,000 companies represented, 35,000 of the 36,000 skills are in play there, and then 32,000 schools. So on the companies and the skills piece, it's good to note that we're not saying there's 128,000 companies in Ohio. Those are how many companies exist on member profiles in Ohio. So many members, I could be Nick, I drive for Uber, Lyft, and Postmates. So I may have 3 companies on my profile, and those would all be added. And same goes with schools, especially now that we've added high schools, and as well as all certificate granting institutions as well. So you'll see Galvanize and others like that on those reports. Next, you'll see the hiring rate, which has been something that all of our states have enjoyed monitoring. This is the data looking to see at what level members in your region are actually getting jobs and benchmark that against the United States. So in Ohio's case, trailing the United States, but the actual roller coaster of the curve looks like it's very similar in parity. We'll look at top industries hiring, breakdown of 1 through 5, again, directly off of the job descriptions and what the member profiles that are getting those jobs over that month period of time. The hiring deep dive. This is a great piece that Mara and team did a really fantastic job of looking at some of our data in different ways based on policymaker feedback that they've had interest in. So certainly we've heard that that women have been disproportionately affected by coronavirus, and especially particularly around workforce. So looking at historical numbers of what was hiring like for women in Ohio in this case pre-COVID, what was it like during COVID, and then what is it like now? So in Ohio's case, you can see a great improvement in hiring, even going back to pre-COVID numbers. Then also another piece that Mara's been working on is on high growth firms. This is really, kind of under the entrepreneurship umbrella that we've had, where we're looking at firms that are considered high growth in our minds that are companies with at least 10 employees that fit that description of growing. So what do those look like in your particular region, and what did those look like, pre-current and then post COVID or current COVID times? Sorry, my computer just seemed to not want to advance here. Oops, there you go. Fastest growing jobs. So this is a snapshot of where we'll take directly off of those who have shown new job changes on their profiles, what job it was, and then the skills that are most affiliated with those job descriptions. So we've had employers, we've had states use these skills to make sure that they're matching some of the ones that, the programs that are on their educational training provider list and what have you are matching these. So these have been interesting to watch over time. The healthcare ones have changed substantially. The non-healthcare roles are starting to increase as we see the virus sort of stabilize a bit in some areas. And then finally, we'll look at career transition. So a snapshot of some of the roles that we saw there. What were the transitions made? So what was the job? What was the fastest growing job that people moved into? What was the previous job before that? What's the rate of transition into that job? How prevalent is that? I think the skill similarity one is really telling when you're working with clients. I personally have been able to leverage these reports. I'm on the City of Phoenix Workforce Board, and we use it all the time to see, as we're working with clients, to see where they're at with their skill similarity with other jobs that they may have interest in. So in particular, and then when you go to the next column, where you look at the training investment piece. So if you see a lower threshold of training to get to that fastest growing job, that could be an area that we would point them to for possible employment or upskilling programs. We've also, as part of this, I did not add it to the slides, and I'm remiss in doing it. We've opened up over 600 courses, LinkedIn Learning courses, to help build for the in-demand jobs that are currently out there, and also just general courses around working from home and resilience. So I'll make sure to send that link around for those, so people have that just to see additional offerings that we have. The plan is to be sharing these reports with Rachel and team about 2 weeks into the following month. You'll get the previous month's report, and Rachel will be sending it out to everybody. And we look forward for any questions. Mar, do you have anything you'd like to add?
I think that was great, Nick. Thank you so much. And if there are any questions, please drop them in the chat so that we can go back to them in the Q&A. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks so much, Nick and Mar. So you'll see in the chat, I did enter the states for which, as Nick was saying, they have enough data to feel confident in what they're reporting. Nick, since we have a few minutes left in your time, you did mention that, for the states that don't see themselves listed there, there are some reports you can pull that are less kind of live. Can you just talk about that really quickly?
Sure, absolutely. We have some of our labor market insights tools, and that's actually that's the one that we worked on with Governor Bullock's initiative that look a whole quarter behind. So those ones are taking a wider net, where in some of those states we may be able to get the previous quarter's purview on that. In some of those reports too, there's oftentimes an industry report if there's a particular industry, software or healthcare that we may be able to take a deeper dive in. So what I'll pull those for the cities, for the states that we don't have the nowcasting reports for, and share those with you all as well.
Awesome, thanks so much. Yeah, and so as Nick mentioned, they are going to be sharing for 16 out of the 21 states, I believe it was, those kind of in-depth data reports. We will get those every month, and we will have those available to go over on your individual state check-in calls if you would like to use them, and so you can see what's going on. And if you have any questions, again, please enter them in the chat. Mar and Nick will be monitoring that so they can answer them live, or we can answer them when we get to the Q&A section. So thanks so much, Nick and Mar. And with that, I am going to turn it over now to Dave Clayton, who is the Senior Vice President of Consumer Insights at the Strata Education Network. Dave.
Thank you, Rachel. And Mar and Nick as well. I appreciate being able to see your work and do that. Let's give you this version of it. Strata is, as many as you know, a nationwide nonprofit that focuses on, as we say, completion with purpose and value. So going beyond access to post-secondary education and training, and even beyond completion, to say completion that fulfills the people's purposes in life, the reasons which they sought education, and adds value and impact. And we really, as we listen directly to those individuals, the vast majority talk about the benefits of education and training having a primary function in their lives of improving their financial, their economic, their work opportunities and outcomes. And that's been really what as our Center for Consumer Insights, our team focuses on is, we have a lot of administrative data. We have a lot of, to complement the work that Nick and Mar and others have about big data, about people. We actually talk directly with individuals to try and bring the subjective voice to help us understand what's driving those trends and those experiences as you work to design programs and policies that meet people where they are. I mean, more than anything, perhaps, education is mutually dependent on the partnership between the learner and the provider. And if you don't have motivated and engaged learners, the program doesn't matter. And if you don't have high quality programs, you don't get the value and the impact you want. So I get the pleasure of working with our team and really designing work to understand the perspectives of Americans about work and education after high school. Education and training both, I should say. We really have three main vehicles in addition to topical surveys, and I'll touch on insights from a couple of these today. We've a long-standing partnership with Gallup, where we have a database of over 350,000 telephone interviews with individuals who've spoken about their education and work. We've also, in complement to that work, at the end of March, started a first weekly for the first 3 months, and now bi-weekly survey, nationally representative survey of Americans to understand how the immediate impact of COVID-19 is impacting not just their lives, but even more specifically, their work experiences and their interests and perspectives on education and training. And so we've done that in a desire to serve people like yourselves who are trying to navigate and solve, to reskill, to repair, to rebuild, and help people move forward. And as people move forward, communities move forward, and states and regional economies, and as we focus on them. So we hope that work is helpful to you. We also, many higher ed institutions want to improve practices and be more learner-centered on their campuses. And so we've developed a survey of alumni that schools can participate in to understand the work preparation and the impact and perceptions of value and skill development that is taking place from an alumni perspective. So let me just highlight, kind of to set context, as we started this work at the beginning of the year 2020, really focused on this crisis of the value of education. And that may not be the moment we're in today in the same way, but from the perspective of individuals, we have always asked two key questions. Is your education worth the cost, or do you think it would be to get more? And so we call that cost value. And then on the outcome, is this education or training going to make you an attractive job candidate to potential employers? And career value, and people answer this, past tense or looking forward with their expectations on a 1 to 5 scale. And there's some interesting things just to note that I think will inform the reskilling work and the rebuilding work that you all are so consumed by. When we look at education being worth the cost, it was surprising to us to see that the vocational technical certificates and programs looked more like postgraduate and associate, the bachelor's being a little soft, but that direct skill training and development of worth cost. And then we looked at this next question of making you an attractive job candidate. And here you start to see some of that alignment between direct career preparation that you would get in vocational technical and in postgraduate. So at both ends of the spectrum, this a little bit more intense appreciation that the education training makes you ready to work or prepares you to be successful at work. When we look at that, even just within an associate degree, we can do this by any major or any field or industry, but just to quickly touch on this today, if you look at individuals in the last 2 decades who've graduated with a terminal associate degree, they haven't gone on to additional education or training, and ask them to rate cost value on the right, on the x-axis, is it worth the cost, and the vertical, is it make you an attractive job candidate, you see the alignment with credentials or fields of study that are more closely aligned to direct work opportunities. We see it in healthcare, being a mechanic, the technology, education. We often think business and computers, but you see from a consumer perspective, they may not be translating that as directly into the career advancement that they're seeking. And that'll become important in a minute. We'll look at fields, people who want to change careers if they lose their work in America right now. Business is one of the top fields people identify, and business is a lot of things, right? And it's a large basket. And so we need to think about how the education training actually aligns to specific work opportunities that they're seeking, not just a general business interest. So if we shift from that historic context around value and consumer perceptions and its connection to work and the relevance of coursework being the primary driver of those beliefs that it was worth the cost, high quality, makes you an attractive job candidate, the rating of relevant courses really drives that. What's happening over the last 6 months? The financial impact is just so tremendously widespread. We all see the unemployment numbers and furloughed and laid off, but even more broadly, if you add to that people who've lost shifts or reduced hours or lost additional income from being self-employed or in other ways, the majority of our nation, 51%, report that they've lost income. 60% of those who remain employed consistently, this has actually come down, but now in aggregate, 60% of employed Americans remain worried that they will lose the jobs they currently have. So that chronic kind of pressure and anxiety, and then just look at, what are people doing in the moment? 78 say they've either borrowed money, received aid of one form or another, cut spending or savings. And we can break those pieces out, but you just, to appreciate and ground us in kind of the day-to-day kitchen table conversations that families and individuals are confronting. So in that, we've asked through the last 6 months, what are plans for enrollment and interest? We've looked specifically at that 51% who say their work has been disrupted. How are they different from those who have not had their work disrupted? And then gotten even more specific and looked at a group of individuals without college degrees, but who are now actively considering and planning on additional education and training. Call them aspiring adults, but what are they seeking? So we go from broad to narrow and try to understand, as people get closer to those choices, how they're considering them, what their barriers are, and what they're seeking. We'll just note that we often think of young adults ages 18 to 24 as traditional students, but right now, those ages 25 to 44 are just as likely to say they will enroll in additional education or training within the next 6 months, that green line that's on top. And so that interest is now perhaps more widespread than it has been. Since the onset of the pandemic, Americans have expressed consistent preference for non-degree and skills training options and pathways. You see, if you're going to, if you will enroll in the next 6 months, what will you pursue? Skills training, 37%, courses, a few courses for specific skills or interest, and then you see degree programs. So this increased interest in non-degree pathways and opportunities and the immediacy of those opportunities has really ramped up over the last 6 months. When you ask what is driving your preference for your career choice, you see this relevance, 38% is the largest driver. It's required in the field of work. It's a better fit for my needs. It's more applied and relevant to my work. So making clear how the pathways you design and develop are relevant will be critical to influencing and engaging people in additional education. Then you see this financial pressure in the moment we're in about being faster, cheaper, more affordable, more convenient, the streamlined access. And then the value continues to press on. It's actually the fact that 10% of Americans stack, we talk about stackability as a group and we know what the word means, but 10% people say my choice is driven by a pathway and a first step into where I want to go. And we'll just highlight, I think, that principle in the implications of what we're finding. So broadly, though, that's Americans. Now we think of that 51% who have lost income from work, whether it's a layoff, a furlough, reduced hours, shifts, or some self-employment or gig economy income that they've lost. You look on the right here and you see that 20% increase compared to your impact of COVID-19 on your interest in enrolling. And you see that amongst adults who have not been disrupted on the left, it's flat, right? Less likely, more likely to enroll, it's essentially even. But those Americans who face disruption are 20% more likely to say I have an increased likelihood and interest in additional education. So change is, the insecurity and the need for change has become real for them and motivated them in a way to considering. This is not yet enrollment in action. This is subjective perception of interest. And so we need to take it for that and not make it more than it is. Amongst those disrupted workers, 4 in 10, 40% say I will need additional education or training to replace a job, to get a comparable job with similar wages and income. So you have that perspective. 60, and then at the same time, when we ask them, well, how do you feel about this confidence that you'll be able to have help getting a good job, back to our value equation, and that it will be worth the cost, you see a real split amongst those disrupted workers. So it's not a slam dunk or universal belief, even though there's increased interest, there is real ambivalence about the career value and the cost value. So it's a little bit of a paradox. You have higher interest and lowered confidence, and the tension that people are feeling. How do we solve that and move them through that ambivalence that they may be feeling? This is not, as Nick and Mar have just showed us, industries vary. And so we have data, and there's more detail on our website and resources we can make available to you. But just to give you a snapshot of what we're able to look at by field of work, you see increased desire, this is career change or reskilling or career changing amongst IT and finance, which is was not what we expected when we asked the question. Thinking of higher skills, and we think of IT as a growth industry and opportunities, and manufacturing, the stereotype of reduced manufacturing. But Nick and Mar will show you, our partners, MZ, will tell you there are actually more manufacturing and jobs available relative to the level of interest Americans have compared to some others. And then again, you see the individuals in business and education have less interest in changing work fields of work. And when you ask them about, okay, if you're interested in changing your field of work, where are you interested in going? IT up at the top there, people are interested in changing out of IT, but you've got another group of people interested in changing into IT. Business had low interest in leaving, but you see high, kind of broad, large breadbasket interest in pursuing business. You look at the relative kind of interest in manufacturing at 2% compared to the advanced manufacturing and other jobs that are available is relatively low. Similarly, healthcare, the interest in moving to healthcare proportional to the number of open job positions and openings is low. And so you'll just be balancing all of those in your respective states as you think of not just people are interested, but how do we channel and point them to the jobs that will be available to fulfill their interests and help them see pathways between their current skills, the programs and training available, and the career outcomes that they're seeking. The other part of this battle, in addition to sort of decreased confidence in the value proposition, and that's largely because there's decreased confidence in the job market, right? If a career is valuable, if education training are valuable because they help you get a better job, if you're not confident there'll be a better job at the end, you don't know if it's going to be worth it, and don't know if it'll help you get a job that doesn't exist. So at the same time you've got that going on, you've got only 44% of disrupted workers agree or strongly agree that they have access to the education or training that they want. And you just see on the right-hand side the decreased number of those in lower income households and individuals. It goes down to a third for those with under 35,000 household income. So think again about access and how do we make these available to sometimes those most in need of the opportunities and the upward social mobility and the immediate pressure on their finances. We asked them how challenging would each of the following be for you personally in pursuing education and training. We see the time and the logistics, 75% say something. What was the surprise in this data was the self-doubt, with 56%, more than the number who said cost, but this feeling of I've been away from school for too long, I won't be successful in an education or training environment. So just as real as those kind of functional barriers are of time, logistics, cost, technology access, the health is a concern about, and safety that you see about frontline workers and going to education settings, and just the immediate COVID-19 pressure. But this internal self-doubt is a part of that crisis of confidence that we just need to be aware of as we design, communicate, and reach out and engage individuals in those education pathways. And then if we just go one dive deeper and look at adults who do not have a 2-year or 4-year degree, they're without a college degree, but who are actively considering or planning on enrolling, how do they look now compared to where they were a year ago? We did an in-depth study at this time in 2019 and have just refreshed many of those questions. You see for this group, this is not comparative data. This is just that same reflection. See that same 20% bump that the disrupted workers have amongst this group of saying, I'm more likely to enroll than I was before COVID. And now you start to look at the comparative data, 2019 to 2020, and what jumps out at you, two things are really significantly different. The doubling of the immediate needs to pay bills and take care of those urgent financial needs. So that's certainly increased. The horizon has gotten a lot closer. And then this optimization, a quarter of people a year ago were talking about more control over my schedule, my ability to meet multiple demands and needs, that's just plummeted, right? To being barely resonant in the, if you think of a Maslowian hierarchy and kind of basic needs and subsistence, you see that very strong here in the current economy. The shift in 2019, it was a 50-50 split. These aspiring adults were saying a non-degree pathway versus a degree pathway. And you just see again that swing from 50% to 68% in 2020 saying a non-degree pathway, skills, credentials, resources that help me more immediately and more quickly and more affordably move into employment opportunities, going back to the slide before. So that intensification has been real. We ask these same questions about value, and we see again the decrease being worth the cost and the attractive, that you'll be an attractive job candidate if you complete the education and training. And so again, the job market pressures and the uncertainty there is part of that. Will I be successful as a student, and will it be worth it? Will it help me get a job? Those internal expectations that people have, in spite of the best designed programs and resources, we have to get them over that hump to engage and invest themselves in pursuing those pathways. This is actually the same slide twice, forgive me. And then if we look at adults without degrees and the degree to which they say they understand very well, a third at the top saying the most valuable skills I should develop through education and training, length of time, cost, financial aid, career paths that fit my strengths. So we just again point to the navigation needs and helping people understand the skills they have, the jobs that are available, back to Nick and Mar, and then the bridges between who they are, where they want to be, and the education and training that will move them forward will be very important. I'll just summarize, and these slides are available to you, of course, and afterwards, but this interest is increased, but the understanding of the opportunities and resources and how to navigate is relatively low. As an imperative, we'd just say the importance of navigational supports for those initial choices is very real. The individuals who have the least, who are the most pessimistic about the ratings of the value of their education or training are individuals who stopped out, right? They've started something and not completed. And actually individuals who say they're most likely to need additional education or training are those who've completed vocational and technical certificates and programs. They've had an immediate success and they see the value of more to advance them. So if we have a lot of people looking in those non-degree pathways, helping them choose the right ones and get the immediate return sets them up for their interest in additional advancement through education and training at later stages. And that's kind of a theme you'll see here in our implications, but less confidence in the career and cost value that we talked about. This paradox between increased interest, decreased confidence, really hinge on clarity of helping people see the connection between where they are and the reality of job and economic opportunities. The more confident they are that if they do these things, they'll have these opportunities in return, and returns on their efforts will help us in navigating that. And then purpose. The horizon has really shortened, right? It's not a degree, it's not 4 years from now, it's not even 2 years from now. Increasingly, it's 68% saying a non-degree pathway is what I need. And the immediacy of paying bills, not improving my schedule or making me feel like a better person has intensified. And so the design of pathways that provide and solutions, you can get immediate credentials that meet needs and provide opportunity now, but the portability and stackability and systems that recognize and respect that will be important for you to get long-term returns on your investments in state efforts that lead to that overall upskilling beyond the recovery. So I just will thank you for your time, and we'll turn it back to Rachel and colleagues, and look forward to any discussion with Nick and Mara and amongst ourselves. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Dave. That was fascinating. And thank you again to Nick and Mara as well. So I know I have some questions, but I want to turn it over to all of you first. I don't think I missed anything in the chat, but you can feel free to just unmute yourself or press *6 if you're on the phone, if you have any questions for LinkedIn or Strata. So I'll give a minute and see if anyone has any questions or comments.
Hi, Rachel. I had just a quick question. This is Victor Rogers from Pennsylvania, and it was to the gentleman who just presented. You had business as a very broad sector. Can you drill a little bit down into that? What did you use to comprise that?
Thanks, Victor. With survey space and this kind of rapid pulse in this particular when we rolled up, it's not even the ONET codes, but we had a broader survey construction. So there are about a dozen things in that, and we couldn't break those out separately with our sample size. So forgive me for not having distinct numbers. I think, real estate and other things like that were included in that, some of the self-employment business pieces beyond what you'd traditionally expect.
Thank you. I was wondering if entrepreneurship was folded in there as well.
It's a good question, and it was not. So that would have been in another group, and not the self-employed entrepreneur piece, but it was industry focused rather than kind of nature of the work, if you would. It's a good clarification. Thank you.
Thanks, Victor. Any other questions? Feel free to unmute yourself.
Yeah, this is for Nick. I was wondering, I often think of LinkedIn as being more of a network for professional level folks as opposed to the lower income type of workers. I'm wondering, is that a demographic difference with the membership that you have? And since COVID has really taken over, have you seen an uptick in the subscription of membership to LinkedIn?
Thanks for your question, Fred. So quite frankly, yes. When I started with this group, one of the things that we were challenging ourselves with is to create more of a value proposition for those that don't have the 4-year degree or the professional job to join LinkedIn. Some of those efforts have been around the way we ingest jobs so that we have those jobs available for people to see. Our LinkedIn Learning courses that are helping skill up people in areas, in jobs that aren't normally considered those that you would need a 4-year degree. Plus with our ingestion of those high schools, I already mentioned that as well. Those are things that we're definitely taking into account. That plus our need to bring in more rural content as well, so that we can appeal to and be able to present our best workforce picture to policymakers in rural regions. Mar may have something to add as well from a data perspective.
Yeah, so that's correct. One addition from the data point of view is that when we look at which are the fastest growing jobs on the platform over time, we do see that some jobs that are traditionally non-professional are starting to pop up really high. So in the reports I will share, you'll see that at the national level, we are seeing a lot of warehouse managers, drivers, also operators, a ton of also like delivery related jobs that were not traditionally captured in the way you think of professional network and are increasing over time. So that means not only like higher membership penetration in those segments, both something that we're actively pursuing, as Nick was mentioning, and something that is naturally happening, especially with the pandemic, but also it reflects more of a part of the economy that we were not traditionally capturing because of how LinkedIn was born. But it's definitely part of our mission to make sure that this is a platform that works for everyone, for every member of the workforce. So that means going well beyond professionals.
Hey, Rachel, this is Jen. I don't have a question, but I just wanted to reflect after hearing all the different speakers, and thank you all for giving your gifts. It's just fabulous. I'm seeing people chat with me privately and say, that was wonderful, that was great, we should dig in on this. So there's lots of good content here. But I do think, as you just named, making LinkedIn or expanding the reach of some of these services and the capabilities is good, but the people on the phone today and these various state teams are, I think, struggling with the fact that even if you have more data points now that say these openings are in this area, or we're seeing more of a need for those kinds of jobs, they're still in these seats, positions of power, in fact, but in these seats trying to be very thoughtful about what kind of employees do we want to have as a talent pool for our state in the coming years. Maybe we don't want to prioritize truck driving only. Maybe we don't want to just be the jobs that are most in demand. We have to sometimes go down 10, 12, 13, 14, 15 spots before we actually get to the kinds of jobs that have the family sustaining wages that we want to push our people to become, so that the state of Texas's talent pool looks like that, not what it used to be pre-COVID, but where they aspire for it to be. So with your vantage points, your brilliance, because you've got a lot of content that you just showed us, how do you think they can, or what recommendations would you give to them as they sit in their state seats and look at that data, but then also have to make some challenging and I think quite visionary decisions about where they want their talent pools to go? What can they use your products to, your partnerships to be able to achieve or accomplish? I hope that question, I know it was long, sort of makes sense, but lays the land.
Thank you, Jen. I can take a first stab from the research perspective. And actually, I love your comment because this is really what we're thinking about all the time. When we refocused all of our research this year to nowcasting and thinking of what can we do right now to get people jobs, we had to move away from some of our previous assumptions and previous research. And I can give you an example about that. So for example, something that comes up as a fast growing job is driver. Let's say delivery driver, there are many versions of that, right? And from our research in AI and emerging technologies, we know that driver is not the job of the future. It's something that is eventually gonna be automated sooner or later at a different pace in different states, but definitely not something that we wanna tell people like, you know, you can invest in becoming a driver and that's your future career for the rest of your lives, and states should be investing there, right? So part of our challenge is to actually acknowledge which are the career pathways that are good investments and promising jobs in the future, and where there's upskilling and reskilling opportunities, and where states can continue to invest or start investing, versus which are the jobs that can help people get out of a bad situation now, right? So that's why we are continuing to do a lot of our research on these themes that we structure into 4 The first one is career pathways, and it's literally trying to identify which are these pathways and which are the occupations that are growing, which are the occupations that are declining, and how people are transitioning from declining occupations to non-declining, or even better, to growing occupations. So that's kind of like the jobs of the future framework. Our second line of work in research is entrepreneurship. And there we focus a lot on what Nick was mentioning around which are the characteristics of firms that continue to grow. And we define growth as in hires, as in companies that hire more people. So these companies tend to have a disproportionate effect on the economy because roughly in the US, based on our numbers, we identify that about 6% of the companies are explaining between 15 and 20% of jobs year over year. So there's definitely a gold mine there, and we want to understand what kind of talent they're hiring, what kind of talent they're looking for, where they are getting it, so that we can better inform where those opportunities are. Our third line of work, as I was saying before, is AI and emerging technologies. And there we try to identify which are these disruptive technologies that are changing the workforce, and link those also to upskilling and reskilling, but also identifying risks for the workforce in the short, medium, and long term. And our final line of work has to do, it's what we call global economic integration. And that focuses a little bit more on the role of networks and how a network can help you get a better job. It can help you also diversify the people you talk to and think differently about your career from a LinkedIn perspective. So that's definitely something that we continue to work on, and it's kind of different from the immediate reaction to COVID, and we want to make sure that that differentiation is clear, because both are important. And as we continue to see that the recovery happens at different paces across the country, we want to make sure that we can bring in some of these themes back at a relevant time, so that we can continue to help states think about the longer term career opportunities as well. That was a long answer. I hope it helped. Nick, do you want to add anything?
No, that was absolutely perfect. That was amazing. Thank you, Mark. Thank you for the question too, Dr. Ward.
Awesome. I think we have time for one or two more questions. Oh, and actually, I do see one sorry. Yeah, someone was just about to unmute. Patrick, yeah.
Yeah, thanks, Rachel. So this is not exactly a question, it's more a comment. So first of all, appreciation to the presenters. It's fascinating information. And, I think what really struck me about this was the knowledge gap for the people that responded to the Strata survey about how do I get information about what the return on investment is, like what my training needs are, what's a good fit for me. And so that suggests a real need for states to partner with non-institution entities, perhaps groups like LinkedIn, to put out neutral information that's not set up strictly to recruit to meet institutional needs, but actually to provide this reliable, neutral information so that adults can make decisions. And yeah, that real shift from last year to this year about the need for non-degree credentials, or the interest in non-degree credentials. Yeah, I think that together just really resonated and suggests a place to start moving towards, while raising questions about how do you develop this information rapidly, accessibly, and in a timely manner. I mean, building data systems takes years from within a state or within an institution. These changes are happening in a much faster timeline. So that's, yeah, thanks for the information. It's definitely got my wheel spinning about this.
Thanks, Patrick. It's an astute observation, and I think the two of the enduring legacies from a perspective of the American public, it will be hybrid education. It's remarkable the preference for that, the convenience of access, reducing burden, and the physical kind of demands, while still providing opportunities to connect personally and directly and have mentoring and peers. but the hybrid piece really feels strong, and even when in different scenarios will persist, I believe. And the other one is this skills and non-degree credentials as starting points, and how do we make sure that building, I mean, how hard is it now to, if you're a high schooler, to transfer your AP credit to a college, if you're in community college to transfer that, much less a, work prior learning assessment or experience. How do we help people actually move without the friction in the system from the investments they've already made, rather than going to remediation or redoing? Those two pieces feel like we'll make progress on them because of these needs, but to your point of the long-term build and the infrastructure, I think the demand is there for the public, for sure.
Definitely. Okay, I think we have time for one last question, if anyone has one.
Hi, I left one on the chat, but it was really trying to understand how LinkedIn is reaching beyond the traditional audience of sort of professional four-year college students. And it was mentioned that LinkedIn recruited institutions, many high schools and potentially associate level institutions. But my question is, how did you recruit individuals within those organizations to register with LinkedIn? Or did you simply make the connection at the institution level?
I believe that's how it started, and I know that they also worked at the very ground level with ads and different ways to get in front of the audiences that are graduating before out of those institutions. But yeah, I think a lot of it started directly at the institution level, and their alumni associations and others. I came from higher ed, and we were using LinkedIn to figure out where our alums went, because no one was calling our school and saying, hey, I got a new job. We were chasing them in other ways now.
Do you have any more active approaches, examples that you've used with institutions to assist in that recruitment of individuals?
To affiliate themselves with an institution?
Oh, well, no. I guess what I mean is guidance and support for the, let's say, overloaded guidance counselors and career advisors at the institutions that you're trying to recruit from, high school and associate degree institutions.
Sure. Yeah. So I know that there are lines of our work that work directly with the career and guidance centers with curriculum around job seeking, and it's like a train the trainer model. I can definitely share. We were actually putting that out through NASWA, the State Workforce Agency group. So we'll share that with you all as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great, so perfect timing to end us on time. Thank you so much, Mar, Nick, and Dave. This has been fascinating. Everyone, we will send out the slides. We will send out information on how to follow up with each of these folks. If you have further questions, of course, you can always come to us, being NGA and AACC, if you have questions as well. And have a great rest of your day. Thanks, everyone.
Bye. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks all.